There is an article that really ticked me off reading it yesterday. And it's a quote from Dan Campbell where he did I think it was a radio appearance, I believe it was, and he said, in so many words, it would have been more beneficial if we would have played our young guards a little bit more in the preseason. It's something that you and I had talked about during the preseason because I was inquisitive with you.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, man. I mean, why aren't the starters playing any time? They had 4 flipping preseason games. There's only 2 teams that had 4 preseason games, all right? And Detroit starters, outside of Isaac Tesla and for 24 snaps, Tate Ratledge were playing a lot of snaps in the preseason. Why would that be? And now that Dan Campbell comes out and says, yeah, I guess we could have played them a little bit more, it pisses me off even more.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this comment. I'm not a big fan of Dan Campbell even said this. I think Dan Campbell does
deep breath before you started that too.
I had to take a deep breath because he does a tremendous job of getting to that microphone, getting to that podium when he's doing interviews, of still stating the facts, staying authentic, and standing on business until the decisions that he makes. The only time I've ever really seen him second guess himself was at the podium after the San Francisco 49ers game. It's the only time I've ever really seen him not stand on the business that was at hand. I don't like this. I don't like that you make this comment. We talked about this. When you're replacing the offensive line that you did, just let this sit here, Shep. All right. Christian Mahogany is now going to be your starting left guard. He got some snaps last year. He played some games, but still, he's not starting in this space. This will be a first full-time season that he's starting. Next to him at the center position is Graham Glasgow, who, though a vet in this league, who, though has starting snaps at the center position, has gone on record consistently and said, my most comfortable position is the right guard position. Move to the right guard position, you have a rookie in Tate Ratledge, who we're all excited about here. The Detroit Lions are excited about. So is the defensive line. They've talked about him tremendously. Penei Sewell has talked about what he can do, what he can bring. But he's still a rookie replacing Kevin Zeiler, who was stout there last year, who was stout there with the Baltimore Ravens. And Graham Glasgow, who's not the center by choice in his own mind, is replacing Frank Ragnow, who's the second best center in the last 10 years. This is what you're replacing. There's key chemistry that you don't get. There's key opportunities. Look at the game. Look at the guy. Look at the missed situations, the miscommunications, and where Graham Glasgow is going one way, Tate Ratledge is going the other way. Meanwhile, you got a guy right there in the hole. Like, these are things that you can get ironed out in the preseason. Like, you can get those things ironed out in the preseason. I'm not saying those guys got to go in there and play 2 whole games.
No,
but they got to go out there and play 2 halves and really dial into it. But you can get 2 series here. You can get 3 series in this game just so they had a sense of playing together in a game. Because though they practiced against the Dolphins, though they practiced against, who was the second team?
Houston.
Though they practiced against the Houston Texans, they didn't play a game. They didn't make the calls in the game-like flow. It's here's a play, here's a little bit.
Right.
All right, cool. It's the second's turn. They didn't get a chance to get in the flow of a game and when things happen, because that miscommunication, guess what? Could have been ironed out in a couple preseason games, so I don't like that.
And it was pretty evident in the game against Green Bay, and it was admitted afterwards. They also weren't hitting quarterbacks in those dual practices either, okay? Because last time I checked, they had red jerseys on the same color of the shirt that really Kool-Aid is wearing right now. Here's my issue, and I think you leave yourself open to second-guessing. When you make this comment, you leave yourself open to second-guessing. And not that he can't take the heat because he has taken it already. But you bring up a really good point. Tate Ratledge was drafted in the second round, folks. You knew he was going to start.
100%.
Okay? Where he was going to start remained to be seen. But you knew he was going to start. Okay? You draft guys in the first, second, and third round to be starters. They said, in addition to what Dan Campbell mentioned that I didn't really like.
It is still saying.
They kept saying that Tate Ratledge is eventually, they vision him as a center. Help me with this and help our audience with this. If you see him long-term as a center, why wouldn't you make him the center right now, knowing full well what you said, Graham Glasgow is more comfortable at right guard? Why wouldn't you do it today?
Respectfully, I don't know. Respectfully, I can't make that comment in full conscience and say this is exactly probably what they were thinking. The only thing that I could maybe say could have been the thing is look at Russell Wilson look at Jackson Dart with the New York Giants. They're not going to start him the first 4 games. They got a tumultuous schedule. They don't want to put him in there in those spaces. But that game 5, they do play against the Saints. It's a much cooler start to play against the Saints. That could be the only thing that I can think about is maybe they get through the first 3-4 games and then move him over. But even that is negligent in a sense. Like, the season is here. The first 6 games are very pivotal for what the season can be for the Detroit Lions.
Especially in this division and conference.
100%. Look, this is Wednesday. This is day 3 since we lost. So I'm not coming up here and I'm panicking. But what I'm saying is this. When you go back to how it ended, questions about, in the offseason, questions into who you're bringing in, questions into positions drafted, questions into who you're not bringing in, questions about moves not made, questions about are the players that you bought in going to be enough, questions about do you want to answer the rush in situation, questions after questions after questions in which you all deny. You say, I have everything. Right. Say we're good. Questions about should we play guys in the preseason. Look, man, we're good. We've done this before. We didn't play guys last year. How did that work out? We didn't play guys before the Chiefs game. How did that work out? This is what the conversation has been all the way until September, whatever the date was, this past Sunday, and you went out there, and everything we asked, it was on display, and it didn't look good. And then after the game, you come to the podium, but later in the week, you do an interview, and in the interview, you say, maybe we should have played these guys in the preseason. Dan, we're trying to place faith in you and these Detroit Lions and stay the course and stay fast with you. But when you make comments like this, on top of all the information that we've consistently asked for the last 6-7 months, it just doesn't look good, if that's fair to say.
I love his honesty. I love how he handles his business. I really do. I just think that's something that you probably don't say out loud. Yeah. Because there were a lot of people, from what I can recall, and you and I were among them, saying, why aren't you doing this? Let's put it this way. Do you believe that football is the ultimate team sport?
Yeah, okay. 100%.
Would you agree that the offensive line requires more cohesion than any other position group combined?
Yes.
Okay. Then
that's why they're always together. They're the only position that are always those guys. Yeah. Like every other position, sometimes the DB hang out with linebackers, receivers might hang. I hang with defensive players. It's just what it is. The offensive linemen are always all together.
If that's the case, why wouldn't you want them to get as much symmetry as you possibly could outside of just practice and the dual practices? Again, I'm not saying play a whole game or even play a full quarter, but are you trying to tell me that it wouldn't have benefited both those young guys? Forget about who they're playing. I'm talking about playing with guys, not playing against guys. Wouldn't it behoove them to have played at least a couple of series from a communication standpoint as much as anything else?
Yeah, I'm 100%. And this goes back into the question of people that are no longer here. Man, AG's his guy. Like Aaron Glenn is his guy. Is this a conversation he and AG have? Hey, look, Dan, I think you might should play those offensive linemen. They're young guys. You want to get them some reps in there. You want to get them some cohesion. Maybe is this the guy he leaned on for that? And that guy is no longer here. He's not calling AG before he's playing the Pittsburgh Steelers to ask him that question. So once again, it's just Dan's made some moves and where you're like, oh my God, and this is one of them. Like, Dan, you don't come to this microphone and in this interview, you double down on the situation which we've all talked about last season and this season. It just doesn't look good. Yeah,
and the fact that, as you mentioned, some miscommunication, specifically around the goal line, that was the most egregious problem that Detroit had. But their inability to run the football was, and look, more than any other team perhaps in the National Football League, Detroit is going to rely on running the football. Why? Because they need play action.
It's the calling card. They need the play action. He's the number one play action quarterback in the NFL. Yes. The problem is the physicality. Let's go to the Minnesota Vikings game. They couldn't run the ball early on in the game, but they still were somewhat physical at the point of attack. They were meeting the Chicago Bears defensive line at the point of attack, and eventually Kevin O'Connell made the decision, you know what? This is going to be a Jordan Mason game, and we'll move Aaron Jones into the passing game. They feature him in the running game, and that physicality, now you're moving guys. Now you're seeing Powell's move. Now you're seeing Jordan Morgan get into the second level. for the first time in the game. You didn't see any of the physicality with the Detroit Lions offensive line. Like you weren't hearing the pads pop. At least not on our side. The pads were popping backwards. They were going backwards all game. That's effort. That's intention. Amongst all the mistakes, my coach Lloyd Carr used to say there's one thing all the time. A lot of coaches follow suit. I don't care if you make mistakes if you're going full speed. Like they're not even making mistakes at full speed. So when you make these comments, it's just disconcerting. It's just disconcerting. It's another thing along the lines of
when you see young guys come out like Tate Ratledge say they missed a lot of assignments. We've got to clean that up. That's one of my favorite phrases in sports. We've got to clean that up. It's like, yeah, no kidding. You got to clean it up.
It's true though.
Do you think he's referring to his physical or mental part of the game?
Mental. He's a physical guy. He's a physical player. He's talking about the mental side of things.
Okay, so if that's the case, one would assume that is easier to clean up than the physical side. It's not like he showed that he was getting bull rushed on a regular basis. He was back on his ass the entire time. People are knocking him around like he's a rag doll, right?
Right.
So is it fair to assume from a fan base that this is a little bit easier to clean up than the physical aspect and your inability to do your job?
Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach for the Detroit Lions, he had a coach on the field for the past 5 seasons named Frank Ragnow. Named Frank Ragnow. I will go back to that point. Is the mental easier to clean up? Yes. If your center is Frank Ragnow, who is basically helping right and left, you can trust him. The left can look to Frank. Hey, look, man, blah, 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 blah. Right guard, Tate Ratledge can look at Frank Ragnow. Hey, look, this is what I see, man. Real quick, what's the play? Frank can calm those guys down, get them right. It's not necessarily his job, but he will because he was the leader. That's what they've had. Hank has had that on the field for the past 4 years with the Lions. Excuse me, not 5, because Hank's only been here 4. He's had that on the field for the past 4 years, and now he no longer has it. And the guy that he has that's going to ensure that 2 young guys, Christian Mahogany and Tate Ratledge, are together, are communicated with, is a guy that doesn't even want to play center. And I'm not saying he doesn't want to play it, but it's a guy that doesn't think center is his number one position.
Yeah, you're not saying he's not trying. You're not saying he's trying to excel. You're just saying he is more comfortable at a different position. Maybe that's something else that probably shouldn't have been said. But remember, when he said it, when Graham Glasgow said, it's my favorite position, where was he? He was at right guard. That was at the beginning of training camp. He was at right guard. Tate Ratledge was the center, and everybody was asking Graham Glasgow, what's it like to be back at right guard? And he says, this is my favorite position. It was at that moment, I believe, when I strongly recommended that the Lions go out and explore alignment. Now, who that may be, I said Brandon Scherf at the time because the dude's been around for 10 years. He's 33. He's played 140 games, 140 starts. We've already gone over that. But there are ways to get better without just using your young guys as part of that solution, and you need some depth anyway. I'm uncomfortable right now. I think a lot of Lions fans are. If they happen to lose to Chicago, I don't believe they will. I think they're going to beat the Bears. But if they happen to lose and they perform in a similar way, and it might even be not even be winning and losing, Braylon. It may be one of those, even if you win, how did you look? Were you able to reestablish what you've done before? Create your identity that was your identity over the last 2.5 years. I think there's deep concern going, hey, man, I mean, what are you going to do? What's your solution to this stuff?
It's going to be interesting to see. Kool-Aid, it'd be interesting to see what you have to think about that. At the end of the day, we're going to come up here. We're not saying the season's over. We're not panicking at all, but these are just more concerning moves in a situation with the Detroit Lions where we already had concerns. We've already voiced things. It doesn't look good when those things show up, and they show up in a major way. So what are your thoughts right now with Dan making these comments on top of how last game finished?
Oh, I agree with you guys, man. I was a kid who grew up on seeing our guys go out there and play in the preseason. And I do believe that there's something to it. Shep has preached on it. You've given your personal perspective on it, too. Just to even experience getting hit, experience that feeling of being in a pocket that may be breaking down, or even how to move around in it, because certain things just, like you said, the identity was lost. At least last year we saw that grit component that they talk about. But this year it's different. And with Hank Fraley, compounding with the fact that Tanner Engstrand looks pretty good with the Jets.
Yeah.
Hank Fraley isn't just your offensive lines coordinator anymore. He got to upgrade to run game coordinator as well.
That's right.
And John Morton said he was going to rely on him a lot. I remember when earlier in the season when they sat down with DetroitLions.com and Johnny Moe was talking about, hey, I can't wait to get with Hank Fraley. And so this is a situation where, when you got this stuff kind of in flux, you got some injuries and you got some young players, and now you also have an offensive lines coach getting an upgrade and more responsibilities. That, to me, is where I do believe that there is some right to have some concern about this situation right now.
It is one game.
Right.
Okay, so we really have to reel that in. The thing I'm most proud of with this show is we don't overreact. We don't get too emotional when it comes to certain things. Well, it is one game. And you reminded us this on Monday.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
Struggled against the Rams, needed overtime. 1 for 7 in the red zone in game 2 against Tampa and lost.
Yeah. 100%, and you're absolutely right. I feel some of the sentiments that Kool-Aid made. One big question, you just talked about adding pieces. You talked about Brandon Scherf, the guy that you wanted to add and what his resume was. You see teams that have won in week 1 already making moves. I think that should be the next part of our conversation because I think we got 3-3.
It is. You're right.
Should they make a move? And we can talk about the guys when we come back. But people that are winning games or losing close are not liking certain aspects of that team, and they're going out and making moves. Two moves made by you know who.
Yeah.
A move in the making by the Dallas Cowboys. A move in the making by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Shout out to Real.
That's what we got to talk about when we get back. Cause
these are names y'all brought up.
That's a professional tease. That's exactly what we're going to talk when we get back.